You're listening to the #1 podcast for oil and gas professionals. What's up? Michael Prime here with Dallas Bozeman.
Hey, what's happening?
What's happening, D? And we want to welcome you to another episode of the Deepwater Subsea podcast. So it's a Friday. You know, we've been sitting around having some fun, playing with some technology, doing some things that I know, I know our competition isn't doing. But what'd you think of virtual reality and BOP troubleshooting?
I think virtual reality is really going to be the way of the future. I mean, if we think about, 360 cameras and the ability to, put on a headset and see what the guys are seeing in high definition, man, that's a game changer, especially if we start getting to the point where we're streaming images, we're streaming videos, and then guys have real time of what's happening out on the rigs. That's going to be solid.
Yeah, and I think with the BSEE requirements for real-time monitoring, you're going to see the bandwidth having to open up. Not that you would be doing a live feed all the time, but I think if it came down to that time where you need to troubleshoot, you just tie into the system and it's like, all right, let me take a look at what you have.
Yeah, and I think it's really going to save companies money in the long run. You invest in the extra bandwidth, you invest in the resources to do your virtual reality, but now you're not spending the money to chopper somebody out as a field representative for a simple problem, that they just really need to put eyes on. So I think logistically and as far as the way technology is advancing in the oil and gas industry, I don't think it's going to be that long before you start seeing it.
No, and I think the thing that's cool about it too is we've been talking about here is, you start getting into the cognitive thinking and you get into these resources like IBM's Watson, the Microsoft Cloud, and all this stuff. If you have all the historical data and basically the life cycle of this piece of equipment, and now I can see it 360 and maybe not real time, but I can have everything I need at my fingertips. Definitely think it's a game changer for the industry.
I think so too, especially with the analytics. I mean, having the analytics to really help narrow it down and saying this is where you should probably start looking, that's going to really help you focus in and get to the root of the problem a lot quicker than if you have to shut down every component and piece just to break it down.
Yeah, I mean, and again, you bring up a good point about the analytics and also the historical data. I mean, what's one of the biggest issues that everybody talks about in the industry is that great crew change, right? And even more so since the downturn where we just let everybody go. And it didn't matter how much talent you had. I think in some companies it came down to how much you made, and it was better for me to keep a cheaper person than it was to keep a bunch of expensive people.
Yeah, that's right. So with the analytics, with BOP inspections, seen you posting a lot, especially on social media about Subsea operational excellence. What is that? Where are we headed?
So for me, Subsea operational excellence, it's a good question. As you know, Deepwater Subsea is a Subsea operational excellence company. We focus on the holistic portion of the business, right? It's not just about BOP compliance. It's about the people. It's about the assets. It's about the optimization of the preventive maintenance. It's about truly understanding the equipment 24/7, 365. And I think once you can step back and really look at the asset for what it is, Subsea operational excellence is very easy to achieve. You need the right people doing the right maintenance at the right time. And when it doesn't work, you need to know how to troubleshoot it. Our goal here at Deepwater Subsea is to be able to help companies achieve that. I'm a firm believer that if you help your customer achieve operational excellence, I don't want to have to be around 24/7. I'm there if you need me, but I want you to be self-sufficient and be able to take care of your own business. So Subsea operational excellence, multiple different pillars, but you have to look at the kind of the cogs in the wheel, and that's, optimization of your preventive maintenance. Are you doing the right PMs, providing the right inspections that provide the right value? What we're starting to see and what the industry sees as a whole, and this has been going on with reliability center maintenance for a long time, if you're doing intrusive maintenance, you're actually inducing faults, you're inducing failures. So if you really look at, if I'm going to do an inspection, what is it that I'm looking to actually get out of that inspection? If you do an inspection just because, you're opening yourself up to risk. So that's part one, optimization of preventive maintenance. Two is competency and training. Do your people really know what they're looking at when they're looking at it? And we need to start training people as craftsmen and technicians than operators, because I've always said anybody can push the button, but when the button doesn't work, that's when your money starts to really, your value to the company really kicks in. And that's where technical field support groups come in. When I first started, if you were calling the OEM, you didn't know how to do your job. Today, because of the high day rates and the risk and everything else involved, you're seeing guys stop troubleshooting. It's literally like, I pushed the button, it didn't work, I was told to call the office. We got to get away from that and get back to guys knowing how to do their jobs. Lifecycle management, when it comes to documentation, what is the traceability of this thing since its birth? An annular is an annular. It doesn't matter if it's a Transocean or Noble or Diamond or Ensco. It's the same piece of equipment made by the same OEM. Really, when you break it down to its core functionality, it's a piston that moves up and down. But the more I understand it, the more I know about it, the more I know how it works, the more I know its history, the better I can maintain it and take care of it. And so that's kind of where subsea operational excellence comes in, and then just the performance in general.
Yeah. I think with life cycle maintenance and talking about, those quality management systems, there's a lot of pushback because people view that as, oh, you're trying to get away from doing your PMs. You think that if you can build data or go towards condition-based maintenance, that you're not going to have to do your annual checks and you're not going to have to do this. And really, it's not about that. It's about creating an accurate life cycle history of this piece of equipment and what's happening inside of it. And sometimes you're going to find that you're having failures before the preventative maintenance catches it. So some are going to get amped up instead of being drawn out. But I think it goes back to what you said, and that's the fact that what we really need to be focused on is not only doing the right PMs at the right time, but ensuring that we're not introducing hazards and not introducing problems with this maintenance system or maintenance style that is constantly breaking things down, trying to rebuild them unnecessarily in some cases. And we're just continually reintroducing problems, whether it's, seals, gaskets, whatever it is.
Yeah. And I think you bring up a good point. I use the example all the time about, annulars and bonnets and stuff. And a lot of the OEMs say, hey, every year you need to tear it apart and reseal it. And my question is, once you've done that, what are you doing with those seals? Well, a lot of organizations will just cut them so they don't actually get reinstalled, and they throw them in the trash. So we haven't learned anything from the actual inspection itself. But the challenge that I have to the industry is, standard 53 says every year you need to do an operator test. Okay, that's kind of predictive maintenance. It's condition-based maintenance. But if I look at it and I do the operator test and it passes, why do I need to tear it apart? I've already proven the integrity of the system because it passed the test. The other thing that's kind of ironic about it is I tear the bonnet apart. We'll use a bonnet, for example. The first thing I'm going to do is an operator test when I put it back together. A lot of times it fails after you rebuild it because you've cut a seal. You've actually damaged it doing the maintenance that you were told to do. And so I think what you're going to start to see is with the OEMs taking ownership of equipment, now that cost goes back on them. And so you'll start seeing a reevaluation of preventive maintenance tasks because it's not an aftermarket revenue generator. It's now an expense. And so I think as we move forward as an industry, we always talk about aviation. Aviation's got away from OEM maintenance in a lot of areas, and they've gone to reliability centered maintenance, which is doing the right PMs on the right equipment at the right time and learning from it. And that's one thing we don't do is learn from what we're doing from an inspection.
Yeah. So before we break off here, we're taking care of PMs. We're taking care of our iron. We're taking care of our elastomers. What role do the people play in the subsea operational excellence? How do we develop teams to be successful within that program?
No, that's a good question. I mean, I think first and foremost, kind of like our background from the military, is you have to train them properly. When they're tearing into a piece of equipment, do they really understand what it is they're doing? Do they understand why they're inspecting it? Once they get it apart, do they know what they're looking at? And then it's the leadership portion of it, which is, a big portion of what you do here for us is the critical thinking, the leadership aspect of it. But people are a huge role because people are the ones that actually put their hands on it. Now we talk about hands-free operations. We talk about robotics and, how much can we automate things? You can't automate maintenance because you're going to have to put your hands on it. You're going to have to tear it apart. So the better that we can train our people, this kind of goes against the grain. And you know me, I'm not afraid to say it. If I go to the OEM school, the OEM's telling me how it works. They're not telling me how to inspect it. They're not telling me how to be a technician or a craftsman. They're teaching me basic fundamentals of the operations. It's like saying, hey, we want the driver of every car to be an auto mechanic, but we're only going to send them to driver's ed school. That's really what we're doing with subsea people and guys in the industry today. They go to a basic 1 week class, they get a certificate, and then we send them out in the field and we expect them to be technicians. And that's not what we're training them for.
Exactly. I think a lot of it has to do with being sure that you get the right people in the right seats. I mean, we've said that, you know, the competency of an individual is one thing, but the team structure is another one altogether. You could have one team that maybe is bottom heavy, maybe a team that's top heavy, and now you're starting to find gaps within the entire program. So how do we bring that holistic approach together where you're not only identifying individual traits and who's successful at what and where they need improvement, where they need work, but how do you structure the teams in a way that covers those gaps and those weaknesses?
Yeah, I mean, I think today's industry is a perfect time to do it. And we've talked about this before with some of our customers. You go out to a rig that's struggling, you start looking at the kind of the team structure, and you'll have one half of the team that might have a strong leader, but the guys actually doing the work are very poor. On the other side, you might have a poor leader with strong guys doing the work, and then you still have a failure. What's interesting is, say 3, 4, 5 years ago, there was so much demand for the employee that if I didn't like the fact that you were going to move me rigs, well, I quit. And I'm like, no, Dallas, don't quit. And it's like, well, then don't threaten me with a transfer. In today's market, organizations would be better off saying, we're going to restructure our rigs to make us as strong as possible. We're going to look at the teams as like you said, the holistic view of it, see who's best fitted to be where. Maybe you're not the strongest leader, but you're good at what you do. But I have a group of guys who are really good at what they do and can help relieve that burden, you know, that you're going under. But unfortunately, organizations, especially in oil and gas, they don't do that. And it's because of the employee has always held that trump card of, well, I quit. Well, then quit. You know, we'll find somebody else, because now there's 10,000 of you. There's 300, 500,000 people out there. I'm sure I can find someone to take your place. Where 3 years ago, it was like, oh my gosh, we can't find enough bodies. Now there's bodies everywhere. So that reset, like the industry has done, we've gone from $600,000 day rates to $200,000 day rates and $150 in some areas.
Yeah, that's right.
The reason for that is because the operators now have control, where before the drilling contractors had control. You want our rigs, you're going to pay for the new iron, you're going to pay a premium. Well, now there's rigs all over the place. And so the operators are going, you want a contract, you're going to pay what we want you to pay. Mm-hmm. So the reset has to take place in all levels.
Yeah, that's right. And, you know, it's a great opportunity to really look at the way we do business and not only streamline and become more efficient, much like the onshore industry has, but it reminds me of a quote we were talking about yesterday from W. Edwards Deming, who is kind of the grandfather of industrialization post World War II. Especially starting in Japan and then bringing those practices to America. But he said, it's funny how we don't have time to improve, but we've got plenty of time to perform work inefficiently and fix the same processes over and over and over. And we see that a lot, unfortunately. We go out and find that there's just this reluctancy to really adapt and overcome. And instead, we're just going to continue to go back to the way things are done and tweak that, rather than looking at the whole system and say, hey, where are the hidden factories where we really inefficient at, and how can we streamline this process, rather than continually to introduce new ways to just make it more cumbersome.
Yeah, it's funny. We talk about lessons learned and stuff, and it's like, are they really lessons learned, or are they just like, damn it happened again? Because if you're not learning from it, you might learn at that second, like, wow, we did it again. That's your lesson. Your lesson is, damn it, we're not learning from the past. There's things that are going on in the industry today that happened 18 years ago when I started. The same mistakes. Why is that? Because again, we're not training guys how to do their jobs, not be operators, be technicians. And we don't have systems in place as organizations to learn from the lessons of others. We go, hey, we're going to collect, after action reviews, we're going to collect lessons learned, but you were in Brazil and I was in North America. I never heard of anything that you had issues with. Technology today and the groups that we're working with here at Deepwater Subsea allow you to learn from the lessons of others before you make those mistakes. JSAs and TSAs and stuff, why do we do them? Because they want you to review what you're going to do before you go on the job. That's a safety aspect. What about the mistakes that have been made during the operations and the tearing it apart and the maintenance aspect? That never gets looked at because the goal is, did anybody get hurt? No. Could we have done anything better? No. But we didn't have the parts. We didn't have this, we're missing grease and just, we don't learn from the technician side of it and just kind of wrapping it up. One of the big things when I was on nuclear submarines is we never tore anything apart. Never, ever, ever. We fired the torpedo tubes. We cycled the missile tubes. We did our PMs, which were functional PMs. I knew that a torpedo tube took so long to cycle through its entire sequence. If it took more than that, I knew what was causing it. If it took less than that, I knew what was causing it. And then we put a formalized quality assurance plan in place and we rebuilt it with new quote unquote OEM parts. But that doesn't happen here, oil and gas wise.
Yeah.
So part of subsea operational excellence is truly, being transparent, learning from the past, looking to the future. Like, you see the two heads of Janus on my desk because you have to look to the past and learn from it while you're looking ahead and how you can improve.
Yeah, I think that's really where it's going to be so successful as we continue to move forward, is because it's so holistic. It not only looks at the way operations have been done before and where they're going, but it's the people involved. It's the equipment. It's the maintenance schedules. It goes all the way down into, how documents are written and produced. So I think really starting to bring all these pieces together and take an approach where we address the entire corporation and not just one department is what's going to take this to the next level.
Yeah, and I think just what makes us strong as an organization is we're very agile. But when you talk about the people, we have people who can they're multidisciplined. We don't have specialists. And unfortunately, that's also what happens in the industry is it's like, I don't do that. I only do this. When you have people who are subject matter experts and who are, the best in their fields, and you bring them together for one, I'll call it one cause, which is to help the customers achieve excellence. That's when great things happen.
Yeah. I mean, I think that's it. It's what's led to military success with special operations teams, being small, being nimble, being customizable, extremely adaptable, and then they're not so specialized. They have specialties that they're great at, but these guys know a broad range of topics. They're good at a lot of things. They wear a coat of many colors. And I think that's the same thing that happens here at Deepwater Subsea. We have people with diverse backgrounds. They have things that they're exceptionally well at, but they've taken the time to branch out and really learn in different areas as well. And then to be flexible enough because we're small enough to be customizable and really meet whatever our clients' needs are exactly. We're not forcing them into our square peg,
That's right. Here's your box. You're going to fit into it or else. It's what can we do for you? And, it's been fun. It's been a lot of fun.
Yeah, it has been.
So cool. Well, if you have any questions about what we do here at Deepwater Subsea, we got some new training courses coming out. We got some really cool things that Dallas and I have been talking about and the team's been talking about. So definitely check out the website at www.deepwatersubsea.com. Check us out on social media, Facebook, LinkedIn, Snapchat, Instagram. I mean, we're all over the place. So until next time, Dallas, greatly appreciate you being on board.
Yeah, definitely.
And it's a lot of fun. Let's go have a good weekend.
All right. Have a good one.
All right. We'll talk to you guys later.